what's going to be sustainable, not just what's going to make me the fastest tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And they're definitely, I think that 75-year-old, like, prospective look is kind of a good look, because I tell people that often too. Some of my patients is just, you want to be mobile when you're 75. You want to be able to get up and move and do all these things, and part of this is creating a plan for the long term. Like, this
mhm.
isn't like, it's good to have the short term goals, like you said, like running the New York City Marathon, the Boston Marathon, or walking your dog a certain amount of times a week or whatever. But I think that long term look towards exercise, I think, is super important, that people need to really latch onto, because again, age does come quick. And it's very easy if you get injured, and you can kind of just be like, oh, I'm going to take some time off, and then you try to get back into it, and then you're like, oh, this isn't the same, so I'm going to do something else, and you kind of run down this rabbit hole of just fear avoidance of the things that bother you, and then you kind of just get to the point where, well, walking doesn't hurt, so I'm just going to walk, and then so has that been kind of your perspective with that?
Yeah, I think my greatest fear is that I fall off the wagon and can't ever get back on.
Right.
Like having watched so many people of varying ages, but like I think the hardest thing is if you just completely stop.
Mm,
And like that was how I pivoted to cycling, right? Like I didn't really want to, it was like I had a hybrid for commuting, but and I hadn't ridden it much, but I started riding that around, and then I was like, oh, this is actually pretty fun. And then I got a road bike. But as I like my initial objection to the idea of getting into cycling and then potentially swimming was like, I don't want to buy more stuff. Like sometimes these extra things are expensive. Like
yeah.
I've spent a lot of money on my fitness over the years, and I think that's a lot of times people's excuses for not having personal trainers too, is that it feels expensive. And um, but like having watched even some of my like super fit friends, if they, whether it was like after a big event, they just like took 3 full weeks off and like didn't keep up some level of habit for consistency. It's just it even as a, even just taking a couple weeks off, like yes, they're fully capable of getting back out and running
Right.
or whatever, but like even just the habit aspects of things get so much harder. And then especially if you're, I feel like the sort of oomph, like the hump you have to get back over to like get back on a get back on track, whatever that means to you.
Yeah.
Even in my late 30s now, I've noticed that like over the last 10 years, it just gets harder and harder.
Yeah,
Like,
building momentum, I think, is what you're talking about, right? Like,
yes, thank
getting
you.
the snowball like rolling is super difficult. Once you get it going, and finally, it's like it becomes a part of you, and it's a lot easier. But in the early stages, when you're trying to move a boulder, it sucks. Like, it really does suck. And so, for people who also have maybe not doing exercise programs, the beginning sucks, and once you have a little bit of momentum, it really can start building and building and building. And I try to label it out. I feel like there's always like a 1 month hump, there's a 3 month hump, a 6 month hump, and then a year. And I think if you can consistently get over those little hurdles, because like after a month you see results and you're like, oh, this is kind of cool, and then maybe you fall off. Or after 3 months, 12 weeks, you see those results, and then you fall off. And then if you do it for 6 months and you fall, there's a point of where you're like, this is good for the year. Or like summer rolls around, maybe you just worked out the 6 months during the winter, and then you
I got
fall
my
off.
bikini bod. Now I'm in a
Ex- ex-
bikini.
yeah, exactly. And then there's also the year, you do it for a solid year, and then maybe something comes up, you get injured or something, and you fall off. And so I think if you can get past a year of just consistent, just even if it's a little bit, it can really become a life, I don't even know, a life thing that you do, basically, something that's a part of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's even true with the micro, right? Like I would say most days that I go for a run, I'm throwing a mini temper tantrum for the 10 minutes before, 10 minutes to 1 hour before I go out, because like
Yeah.
I don't want to go, I just want to sleep. Or if it's
Hmm.
after, if I wasn't smart enough to work out in the morning, I just want a glass of wine.
Right.
Um, and then and then putting on the shoes is often the hardest part. And then out the door, sometimes I'll trick myself by being like, I'll just go run 20 minutes. And then no, like within 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, like we're doing 45.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why
um,
do you think that is? Why do you think we always have to trick ourselves? Because I noticed that too, even when like not even exercise. Let's just say like if I have a bin full of laundry and I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. But then if I fold one shirt, it's over. It's
Yeah,
going to be done. Like, why do you
totally.
think we do that? Do you think we're just our own worst enemies?
Or is that just the flip side of momentum, where like
Yeah.
whatever you're doing in that moment, it's like you have to shift your momentum to do the new thing.
Right.
Um, I think I also feel like I wonder how much this is related to like just being sort of overly multitasky in a lot of our lives, where like
Mm,
the switching, the constant switching means that when you actually like need to switch, it's really hard.
yeah.
Like I'm sure it was hard 100 years ago too, but
It's just a little bit harder when you have so many other things going on. Because like, if you have like 5 things you need to do on your to-do list, like which one should I spend the most energy on? And instead of doing just starting at one, perhaps you're just like, ah, I just don't have to do any of them.
yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
some of these things take more focus, right? Like
Yeah.
it's part of what I love about exercise when I go do it, but it's can be hard in the moment sometimes to like put everything else aside, because I kind of have to put everything else aside
Mhm.
to go do it. And like there's certain things I can kind of weave in from a multitasking standpoint, like especially if I'm on my bike trainer where it's just me in a video game basically. I can have whatever I want on my other screen, but then I'm not as focused on the ride either. So like
Yeah.
that only works really if I'm doing like a recovery ride or something like that. I'll listen to like audiobooks and that kind of thing on long runs sometimes, but especially recently I've just been more and more inclined to run without even without headphones. Um,
Yeah, I think it's
in
almost
part because
we're
I
gonna get
like
to
the
like that
break.
box. Yeah, break. Yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like that boxing thing where or yoga. It's that zen, that kind of your ability to get into a flow state of doing one single thing, and that's all your attention's focused on.